The rise of shale. Americans have a love-hate relationship with the petroleum industry. They love having cars and air conditioning, but hate pollution, global warming, and the environmental damage associated with exploding rigs or tanker spills. Yet no matter how Americans feel or how loudly they may complain, the simple fact remains that fossil fuels are their way of life. In terms of total American energy usage, whether it be from electricity production, chemical production, or transport fuels, by their own government's numbers, 34.7% originates from oil, 26.0% from natural gas, 17.4% from coal, 8.1% from nuclear, 5.5% from hydropower, and only 3.4% from non-hydro renewables like solar and wind. That's 80% of the total from fossil fuels. The same love-hate dichotomy applies to the shale industry. I'm going to take us on a quick tour through the industry to help explain this disconnect. The point of doing so is not simply to show that shale is already a done deal, but rather that public opposition to shale will soon crumble. When that happens, the full impact of shale will be realized, which in turn will unleash global trends that will underpin American power for the next several decades. Petroleum is a catch-all term that includes all types of crude oil, natural gas, as well as associated liquids such as propane. When discussing more specific products separately, such as oil or natural gas, I will use those terms specifically. Most petroleum formed as a result of life forms, typically plankton, being trapped in layers of sedimentary rock. After millions of years of heat and pressure, those critter corpses cook into petroleum, which percolates up through the rock until it reaches a formation through which it cannot pass. These cap rocks allow the petroleum to collect into large pools. Most of the petroleum harvested around the world over the past couple of centuries has come from such conventional reservoirs. But not all petroleum is located in large, easy-to-stick-a-straw-in pools. If the rock in which the oil and natural gas was formed is not porous, then the petroleum remains trapped where it was created, rather than slowly collecting into an area where it can be easily harvested. In such rock formations, the petroleum remains finely distributed, trapped between individual rock particles. The result isn't so much like chips in a cookie, but instead like the booze in a dry rum cake. The rum is there, suspended within a matrix of cooked batter. It's a devil of a task to coax it out. Data is far from complete, but the most recent estimates project that some 90% of the world's petroleum is locked into such geologies. Even if such estimates are wrong by an order of magnitude, it suggests that the amount of petroleum in the wider world is double what we thought it was just a decade ago. One of the major types of rock formations that trap petroleum in this way is called shales. Shales are sedimentary rocks deposited hundreds of millions of years ago at the bottom of oceans. Because of their ocean floor origins, they are typically found in long, thin, horizontal layers covering up to tens of thousands of square miles. As with other unconventional petroleum basins, the ultrafine distribution of shale petroleum makes the use of conventional energy production technologies largely useless. So, the energy industry had to get unconventional. The integration of two unrelated technologies is what has brought us the shale era. The first technology is horizontal drilling. Your traditional petroleum well is a purely vertical affair. If you happen to miss in your downward drilling, tough. If you hit a particularly slanted formation on the way down that breaks your vertical descent, tough. If there's a particularly hard rock on the way down that you cannot drill through, tough. Horizontal drilling allows you not only to drill laterally, but also at angles and around corners, even around multiple corners, to weave your way through complex formations to reach exactly where you want to go. A typical vertical well might only expose 10 feet of petroleum-rich rock. But a typical horizontal well exposes up to a mile. As seismic detection techniques have improved in reach and precision, horizontal drilling has both made pre-existing petroleum fields more productive and enabled energy firms to bring previously unreachable deposits online. In regions with less than stellar technology, Cuba comes to mind, horizontal drilling has allowed onshore producers to reach a few miles into offshore environments by drilling hard up on the coast, but sending their drill shafts out under the seabed. The second tech, hydraulic fracturing, uses water pressure to crack rock. In hydraulic fracturing, petroleum engineers inject a 90% water mixture down the well shaft and into the rock formation. Liquids, unlike gases, do not compress under pressure, and so the rock becomes spiderweb with billions of tiny cracks. Included in the liquid mixture is something called a proppant, typically some sort of sand, that wedges itself into those cracks. The rock itself absorbs some of the liquid, and the rest is sucked back to the surface to be recycled, but most of the proppant stays behind, propping the cracks open. Those cracks provide pathways for the no longer trapped petroleum to flow to the well shaft. In essence, hydraulic fracturing forces a non-porous rock to be partially porous, but not porous like the sort of rock formations that generate traditional petroleum deposits. Instead of allowing the bits of petroleum to slowly percolate upward over the millennia, Fracturing enables them to travel only along the new, specifically engineered fractures directly to the well shaft. The use of these two technologies in tandem, colloquially if somewhat inaccurately known as fracking, is the basis of the shale energy boom. The focused specificity of fracking technology sets off a very predictable chain of events. Once the cracks reach the trapped petroleum, it flows out, well, up, with considerable speed. At first. Remember that these techniques tap a reservoir, but one in which the petroleum is highly sequestered and barely connected by fractures. Only those elements directly connected to the fractures can flow at all, and they can only flow to the borehole. The result is an initial burst of petroleum output, followed almost immediately by a quick drawdown. In most areas, 1/3 of the total output of a well comes in the first year or two of its 20-year lifespan. The most obvious implication of this quick bleed-off is that if a shale energy industry is going to maintain, much less grow, its output, then a lot of wells need to be drilled every single year. In the United States, that comes out to about 50,000 fracked wells a year. Sounds like a lot. It is a lot. Since fracking took off less than a decade ago, the total number of petroleum wells in the United States has doubled. Yet this is a pace that the Americans can keep up for a very long time. It is difficult to provide accurate data as to baseline information, such as production rates or reserves. Not because such data is unavailable, but instead because the newness of the industry means it is changing so quickly. In August 2012, the Energy Information Agency, an office within the U.S. Department of Energy, released a comprehensive report on the then reality of shale energy. The EIA used the best data available at the time, which had been gathered by December 2011. They pegged American shale oil output at 2 million BPD, about the same as Norway's oil output. They also made projections as to how shale output would unfold over the next 8 years. When this report came out, it was the definitive work on the reality of shale. A mere 1 year later, that report was hideously out of date. With 50,000 or more new wells coming online annually, keeping tabs on those wells across hundreds of legal jurisdictions is a logistical impossibility. And as is common in any high value-added industry, innovations do not require government approval, registration, or even notification. Such innovations are, however, applied to every well the rig crew works from that point on. The result is an ever-building skill set that spreads and compounds throughout the industry. In December 2013, only 16 months after the EIA's exhaustive report, shale oil output had increased from 2 million BPD to 3.8 million BPD. That's not only more than Canada's oil output, but is about 50% more than the EIA's projection for U.S. shale oil output for 2020. At the time of this writing in mid-2014, even that data is